Morning, my son called me from the driveway of my own storage unit. I was sitting in my sister's kitchen in Savannah, drinking coffee that was too strong and watching rain hit the window. It was the kind of quiet morning I hadn't had in years. Then my phone rang. Dad. His voice was tight, not scared exactly. More like the way a man sounds when he already knows something is wrong but hasn't let himself say it out loud yet. She's here, at the unit. She's got bolt cutters, Dad. I set down my coffee. Stay on the line, I said. Don't say a word to her. Just stay on the line. I want to tell you this story properly, because if I just start with that phone call, you won't understand why I wasn't surprised. Not even a little. I've been waiting for that call for almost 2 years. My son's name is Nathan. He's 34 years old, tall like his grandfather, quiet the way his mother was quiet. The kind of quiet that comes from thinking before you speak, not from having nothing to say. He works in logistics, manages a distribution center outside of Columbus, Ohio. He bought his own house at 29. He's the kind of man who checks his tire pressure and keeps his word. I raised him that way. His mother and I both did. His mother, Carol, passed 8 years ago. Ovarian cancer. We had 14 months from diagnosis to the end, and I'll spare you the details except to say that she handled it with more dignity than I could have managed, and that the last thing she made me promise was that I would not spend the rest of my life being bitter. I've mostly kept that promise. What Carol left behind, besides Nathan and a life I'm still grateful for, was a letter. She wrote it by hand during those 14 months, a few pages at a time, addressed to Nathan. She didn't write it to me. She wrote it to him. She said she wanted him to have her voice for the moments she wouldn't be there for. His wedding, if he ever had one. His first real heartbreak. The days when he questioned whether he was good enough. I kept that letter in a fireproof lockbox in my home office for 6 years. Then I moved it. I'll get to why. Nathan met Leanne at a work conference in Cincinnati about 3 years ago. She was in sales for a medical supply company, sharp dresser, easy laugh, knew how to walk into a room. I met her 4 months into their relationship at a dinner Nathan arranged at a steakhouse in Columbus. She showed up 20 minutes late, apologized once, and then spent the first hour asking me questions about my house. Not about me. About my house. What neighborhood was it in? How long had I lived there? Had I done any renovations recently? Was it paid off? She asked that last one while reaching across the table for the breadbasket, casual as anything, like she was asking what I did for exercise. I answered her questions. I was polite. I watched Nathan watching her, that look on his face. Proud, a little nervous, wanting everything to go well. I know that look. I wore it myself a long time ago for different reasons. After dinner, when Nathan walked her to her car, I stood on the sidewalk and felt something settle in my chest. Not anger, more like recognition. I'd seen this before. Not in my own life, but close enough. My older brother went through a divorce in his late 50s that nearly wiped him out. A woman who had spent 4 years learning exactly what he owned before she decided to leave and take half of it. He rebuilt, eventually, but the look in his eyes for a few years after was something I never forgot. I didn't say anything to Nathan that night. It was 4 months in. Maybe I was wrong. I gave it time. I was not wrong. Over the next 8 months, I started noticing things. Little things, individually easy to dismiss. Together, they told a clear story. Leanne had opinions about Nathan's house that she expressed as suggestions and then as expectations. The guest bedroom should be repainted. The backyard needed a deck. The kitchen appliances were outdated. Nathan, who had been perfectly happy in that house for 5 years, suddenly started talking about renovation costs. She didn't move in officially, but she was there most nights. Her things accumulated. Her name started appearing in Nathan's sentences the way water appears in a low spot. Gradually, and then everywhere. Then one evening Nathan called me and mentioned, almost in passing, that Leanne thought it might make sense for him to add her to his mortgage. Just for tax purposes, he said. She had explained it to him in detail. He was repeating her explanation back to me. I asked him to come visit that weekend. Just him. He came on a Saturday. We sat on my back porch in Dayton. I'd been in Dayton for 11 years by then, a brick house on a quiet street, nothing flashy but mine free and clear, and I talked to him the way his mother would have wanted me to. I didn't tell him Leanne was bad. I told him to slow down. I told him that a person who loves you for who you are doesn't need to be on your mortgage 18 months in. I told him that real partnership gets built over time and that anyone moving fast on financial matters is moving fast for a reason. He listened. He nodded. He went home, and I could tell from the drive home that Leanne was going to have a counterargument for everything I'd said, and that Nathan was going to hear it the same evening. She did. He did. He called me the following Tuesday and told me gently that he appreciated my concern, but that Leanne felt I didn't trust her and that it had hurt her feelings. He said maybe I should give her more of a chance. I said I would. Around that time, I made a few quiet decisions. I'm not a wealthy man, but I'm comfortable. Retired from 30 years in civil engineering. My house is paid off. I have retirement accounts, a modest investment portfolio, and a storage unit on the east side of Dayton where I keep the things from our family home that I couldn't bring myself to sell after Carol died. Her grandmother's furniture, boxes of photographs, Nathan's childhood things, and the lockbox with Carol's letter. I had kept the letter there for 2 years by then after moving it from my home office. I moved it because Nathan had been to my house many times, and Leanne had been with him several of those times, and I had noticed her eyes moving across my shelves, my filing cabinet, the framed photo of Carol and me on our 25th anniversary where Carol was wearing the pearl earrings her mother gave her. The storage unit she didn't know about. Not for a while. Then Nathan mentioned it to her. He told me this himself, about 6 months before the phone call from the driveway. It came up because she had asked if I had any of Carol's jewelry, and he had mentioned that some things were in storage. He thought nothing of it. He was answering a question, but I thought about it, and I made a decision. I had a lawyer friend, a woman I'd known since Nathan was in grade school, draw up a simple document placing my house in a revocable living trust. The house could not be transferred, refinanced, or accessed without my direct instruction. My investment accounts had beneficiary designations already. My will was updated. Then I went to the storage unit and I rearranged things. I moved Carol's letter, the handwritten letter, the one she had spent months writing for Nathan, out of the lockbox. I put it in an envelope, sealed it, put it inside a book on my shelf at home, somewhere safe, somewhere personal. Into the lockbox, I put something else, a single photograph, a printed email exchange, and a note in my own handwriting. I locked the lockbox. I put it back in the storage unit, visible, in plain sight, exactly where it had always been. And then I drove to Savannah to visit my sister, because I had been promising her that visit for 8 months, and it was time. She's got bolt cutters, Dad. I want you to understand what Nathan sounded like in that moment. It wasn't just that he was telling me what Leanne was doing. It was the confusion in his voice. The way a person sounds when they're watching someone they love do something they can't explain. She said she needed to get something out, he said. For you. She said you asked her to pick something up. I didn't ask her anything, I said. Silence. She's cutting the lock, he said. Let her, I said. Are you inside the unit? I'm standing outside. She's at the door. Nathan, I need you to stay calm, and I need you to watch everything that happens next. Can you do that? What's in there, Dad? Your mother's furniture, some boxes, and the lockbox that Leanne has apparently decided she has the right to open. Another silence. Longer this time. She told me there might be important financial documents in there that you'd forgotten about, he said. Account information, things that needed to be handled. The care she had taken. The preparation. She had built an entire story, plausible, concern-sounding, framed as helping, to get into that unit. She had told Nathan just enough to get him to drive her there without telling him enough that he might object. Nathan, I said, she's been planning this for a while. I've been planning longer, They tore open the lockbox. He went quiet. I heard the sound of metal, the groan of a storage unit door rolling up, footsteps on concrete. Then I heard nothing for almost 2 minutes. Then I heard Leanne's voice, and she was not happy. What was in the lockbox, of course, was not financial documents. There were no forgotten accounts, no paperwork she could photograph and use or threaten or leverage. There was the photograph. It was a picture of Nathan and me at his college graduation, the two of us laughing at something I can't even remember now. His mother, behind the camera. Carol had taken about 40 pictures that day trying to get a good one, and this was the one that came out blurry from her laughing at us. I'd always loved it because of that. There was the printed email. That email was from Leanne to a college roommate sent 14 months earlier and forwarded to me anonymously by someone who, I still don't know who, thought I should see it. In that email, Leanne had described Nathan as patient money, explained that his father was sitting on a paid-off property in a decent neighborhood, and discussed a strategy for getting herself onto the right paperwork before the relationship ran its natural course. Patient money. I had read that email so many times I had it memorized. I printed it because I wanted it to exist somewhere physical, somewhere that couldn't be deleted. There was my note, written in the same deliberate handwriting I use for important things. It said, "If you're reading this, you're exactly where I expected you to be. Nathan deserves to know everything. I made sure he would." And that was it. That was the whole lockbox. I found out later what happened in those 2 minutes of silence. Leanne opened the lockbox. She rifled through it quickly, her hands moving fast, looking for what she had come for. Nathan watched her. He watched her face when she found what was inside instead. He watched her read the photograph caption on the back. Carol had written on the back of every photo she ever printed and discard it. He watched her unfold the email printout. He recognized her email address at the top. Nathan told me later that he read it twice. Standing there, in my storage unit, in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon, he read his girlfriend's email to her college roommate twice, and then he put it back in the lockbox and he said to her, quietly, "I think you should go." She tried. I'll give her that. She tried the confusion angle. What is this? Where did this come from? This is taken out of context. She tried the hurt angle. Do you really believe this over me? She tried the attack angle. Your father has never accepted me. He set this up to destroy us. That last one she should have left alone. He did set this up, Nathan said. That's what I just figured out. He saw something I didn't, and you walked right into it. She left. She took an Uber from the storage facility because Nathan would not drive her, and she left. 3 days later, she came to collect her things from his house, and he let her in and watched her take everything that was hers and nothing that wasn't. And when she was gone, he changed the locks. He called me that evening. "How long did you know?" he asked. "I suspected from the first dinner," I said. "I knew enough to act about 1.5 years ago." He was quiet for a long time, not angry. Processing. "You never told me. Would you have believed me?" He didn't answer that. Because we both knew the answer. There are things I want to say about what came after because the story doesn't end with Leanne's Uber pulling out of the storage facility parking lot. Nathan and I had the hardest conversation we'd had since his mother died. Sitting on my back porch about 2 weeks after everything. He needed to know why I hadn't come to him directly. Why I hadn't just told him what I knew. I explained it as best I could. I told him about the email, about the timing of her financial questions, about the mortgage suggestion, and how I had watched him repeat her arguments back to me word for word without realizing it. I told him that a man in love, he is criticism of his partner, as criticism of his judgment, and that I wasn't willing to make him choose between me and her before he had the information to choose clearly. I told him I had watched his grandfather handle a situation like this when I was young. A woman who had gotten close to our family for reasons that became clear only after she'd moved money around and left, and that I had always remembered the look on my grandfather's face when he said he wished. Someone had shown him earlier rather than told him. "Your grandmother used to say," I told Nathan, "that you don't warn someone away from a fire. You let them feel the heat, and you make sure they're close enough to step back before they get burned." He sat with that. Mom would have handled this differently, he said. Your mother was braver than me, I said. She would have said it to her face at that first dinner and charmed her into tears and somehow come out with Leanne's whole life story and an apology. I'm not built like that. I do what I can do. He laughed. First time I'd heard him laugh since all of it. It sounded like relief. I want to say something about the lockbox. About what I chose to put in it and what I chose not to. Carol's letter is still in that book on my shelf. Nathan doesn't know it's there yet. I'm saving it for the right time. Maybe his next relationship, when things are going well and he's thinking seriously about his future. Maybe just a random afternoon when he comes to visit and we're sitting quietly and I decide the moment has arrived. Carol wrote that letter knowing she wouldn't be there for the moments that counted. She wrote it so her voice could reach into the future on her behalf. There is not a version of that letter I would have let Leanne touch. Some things are not about money. Some things are not about property or accounts or paid-off houses. Some things are just yours. Private. Sacred in the plain sense of the word. The lockbox held what I needed it to hold. It told Nathan what he needed to know in a way that I could not have told him myself, and Carol's letter stayed safe, waiting for a moment worthy of it. Nathan started seeing someone new about 7 months after Leanne. A woman named Elise, a nurse practitioner from Westerville. I met her for the first time at a cookout at Nathan's house in July, and she showed up on time and spent the first 20 minutes asking me about my career in civil engineering, and then spent the rest of the afternoon in the yard with Nathan's dog, throwing a ball, laughing at nothing in particular. She hasn't asked about my house. She hasn't asked about much of anything, actually, except whether I wanted more potato salad. I like her. I know some people will hear this story and think I was too secretive. That I should have told Nathan directly, that a father's job is to protect his son by being honest, not by being strategic. Maybe. I've thought about it. But I know what I saw in Nathan's face at that steakhouse in Columbus. I know the way a man in love defends the person he loves before he has any reason not to. And I know that if I had sat him down with that email 14 months before the storage unit, he would have asked Leanne about it, and she would have had an explanation, and he would have told me I was seeing things. And I would have lost 2 years of his trust, trying to prove something he had already decided wasn't true. I'm 63 years old. I've made enough mistakes to know which battles I can win by fighting, and which ones I can only win by waiting. My son is 34 and healthy and working and, slowly I think, trusting his own judgment again. That's what I wanted. That's what his mother would have wanted. The storage unit has a new lock on it now. A good one. The lockbox is back where it belongs, empty, and on a shelf in my living room, inside a book Carol gave me for my 40th birthday, there is a sealed envelope with Nathan's name on it in her handwriting. One day he'll be ready for it. I'll know when. I've had a lot of time to think about what happened, and the thing I keep coming back to isn't the lockbox or the bolt cutters or even the email. It's the question Nathan asked me on my back porch 2 weeks after everything settled. Why didn't you just tell me? It's the right question, and I've tried to answer it honestly. Here's what I know now that I wish I'd understood when I was his age. There's a difference between information and understanding. I had the email. I had the pattern of behavior, the mortgage suggestion, the way she moved through my house with her eyes before her hands. I had all of it. But information that arrives before a person is ready to receive it doesn't become understanding. It becomes an argument between a father and a son about the woman the son loves. Those don't end with the son saying, "You're right, Dad." They end with distance. I've watched people try to protect the ones they love by telling them the truth too early, and I've watched that truth get turned into the problem instead of the thing that caused it. The messenger becomes the villain. The warning becomes the wound. I wasn't willing to do that to Nathan, and I wasn't willing to do that to the trust between us, which took 34 years to build and which I intend to protect for whatever years I have left. What I've learned, not from one event but from a long life of watching people make choices and live inside the consequences, is that character doesn't stay hidden forever. It reveals itself. Given time and the right circumstances, a person shows you exactly who they are. Leanne showed Nathan who she was the moment she stood in my storage unit rifling through a lockbox that wasn't hers, building a story in real time for why she had the right to be there. He saw it, not because I told him, because she showed him. That's not luck. That's what happens when greed runs out of patience. And what I want Nathan to carry forward, what I hope he takes from all of this, is that his judgment is not broken. He loved someone who was performing love back at him. That's not a failure of intelligence. It's a failure of information. And now he has the information. The question is whether he uses it to become more careful or more closed. I'm watching for that. I think he's going to be more careful. That's the right direction. As for me, I sleep fine. I did what I could with what I had. I protected my son the only way that made sense given who he is and what he needed. Carol's letter is still safe. The house is still in the trust. And on a good evening, I sit on the back porch in Dayton with a glass of iced tea and think about what it means to have played a long game quietly and had it work out. Not every story ends this cleanly. I know that. I'm grateful this one did. The lockbox is empty now. I might leave it that way.